Good evening. This is the Guilford Board of Education. It is Monday, January 13th. Welcome. Happy New Year. Welcome you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We have not been together for a couple of weeks and are about to spend a lot of time together over the next month and a half and longer as we head into budget season. Going to start off, please, tonight with approval of the December 9th, 2024 meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or corrections? I had one very minor correction. Page 4, 9.2, it says Dr. Freeman reviewed the 3 proposed draft calendars. I believe that was me. Anything else? All right, there is a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstention.
Any abstentions? One abstention?
Abstention.
2 abstentions, thank you. Mr. Scretta and Ms. Beck both abstain. All right, public comments for topics on the agenda. Is there anyone who'd like to address the Board of Education tonight on topics on the agenda? All right, seeing none, I'm going to move us on to review and approve of expenditures for the month of December 2024. Mr. Del Ventura.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Balish-Tracy. Reviewing fiscal year 2024-25, month of December. Expenditures for the month were $5,809,460.99. That puts us 45.41% of the budget through December as compared to 45.97% in 2023-24. Revenue was $66,654.96. That includes $61,500 for tuition from Clinton and Madison Public Schools, $3,198.34 for Medicaid, $950.62 for non-resident tuition, and $1,006 for pre-K tuition. For the salaries line, we were in line with the prior year. The credit in the coaching line is due to reimbursement for an assistant coach for our lacrosse team. The credit in the safety monitors / crossing guards line is due to the reimbursement from the town of Guilford ARPA funds. Going through the rest of the lines, employee benefits, the percentage of the budget is higher than in the prior year. Our purchase services, the percentage of the budget is lower than the prior year. The credit in the information systems line is due to the billing error from the town. For our tuition line, it is lower than the prior year. Supplies and materials is in line with the prior year. Our capital is lower than the prior year. And transportation is higher than the prior year. Our warrant for the month of December totals $2,564,580.05.
Excellent. We discussed the report and the warrants in detail in the Operations Committee just prior to this meeting, but I'll certainly open up the floor if any of my colleagues have anything else to add. All right, hearing none. Can I have a motion to approve the December 2024 financial reports for fiscal year 2024-25?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's everybody. Thank you. Number 6, communications. Does anybody have communications to share that they have received in the last month since we last met at a regular meeting? None to report? All right. Student representatives, welcome back. I hope you guys had a nice holiday break. Wonderful.
Just wanted to say Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you.
New Year.
For AW Cox, for the past couple weeks, students and staff have dressed up as future professors, showing careers like doctors, engineers, musicians, and more. A Winter Wonderland Whiteout Spirit Day is planned in 2 weeks, which emphasizes inclusiveness. And then the school year is kind of nearing their midpoint, as are most of the Guilford schools. And the first semester progress reports will be shared with families at the end of the month. And then for GHS, winter sports are in full swing with the boys hockey team taking down hand last Friday.
Bless you.
Bless you.
At Guilford Lakes, right before break, the student and staff decorated with festive winter-themed classroom doors. GHS Voices also came to visit on Tuesday, December 17th, which was a fun way for them to celebrate the start of break. Thursday, January 9th, was Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. The Guilford Lake 4th Grade Community Service Committee organized card making and presented them to our wonderful officers with some treats from the Fresh Market. 3rd grade learned about the branches of the government during an interactive school field trip in which students participated in a play about government. And finally, building off the fossils unit from last time, the 2nd graders visited the Peabody Museum. For GHS kicked off break with a winter pep rally with our famous student-staff basketball game. While it was a close game, the students maintained their title. And midterms are approaching, so students have begun to prepare for the upcoming tests to transition into a new semester.
For Melissa Jones, in December they enjoyed a sing-along with a surprise performance from their teachers. And then families came to make gingerbread houses together. And then later this month, the kindergarten class is going to the Eli Whitney Museum. And then for other upcoming events, they're having a family fitness night, and then they're also having the report card distribution. And then for Baldwin, they're proud to announce that they were able to raise over $1,600 for the Hats for Hope fundraiser, which goes to the Tommy Fund for childhood cancer, and they give a big thanks to their student council for managing and setting up the event. And recently, they've implemented lessons and activities to help students develop important life skills like studying skills and growth mindset. And their school focus this month is courage, gratitude, forgiveness, and compassion. And they give a big thanks to Christine Mulqueen, Jean Oregamon, and Dana Cutter for helping spearhead this initiative at their school. And then for music performance, they have all performance groups performing in January and February. So for orchestra, it's January 23rd. Choir, it's January 28th. And for band, it's February 5th. And then for GHS, Voices ended their caroling season and had a great time caroling outside the school and at the elementary and middle schools. It was really fun, and it was really nice to talk to the kids and see them have so much fun. And then they're getting ready for the Meals on Wheels concert, which is February 7th, and it's a fundraiser as well. And this year's theme is Music in Motion, so they're playing jazz pieces from like different parts of the world. And Voices will be there, orchestra will be there, and so will the jazz band. So sure if you want to hear that.
And then just for Adams, upcoming concerts for 7th grade band and orchestra, select ensemble, and 7th grade, 8th grade chorus are the next 3 Wednesday evenings at Adams. 7th grade students visited A.W. Cox and Calvin Leap prior to the winter recess to share a culminating project from their language arts classes, a children's book they wrote and illustrated based on their learning from a reading A Long Walk to Water. NGHS and student council leaders will be attending a middle school level student leadership conference this week at Southern Connecticut State University to learn more about how to build their leadership skills.
And then unfortunately, Vince wasn't able to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Does anybody have questions or for our group here?
Good luck on midterms.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. You are welcome to stay. We also understand if you need to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy New Year to you as well. All right, we are up to agenda number 8, which is a superintendent's report, and tonight we are going to receive the budget presentation.
And I'm just going to step over to the podium for this one.
Sounds good?
So thank you very much, Dr. Balistraci. It's the one time a year that I move to the podium to make my report. I am happy this year again to present this year's budget presentation. We began work on this budget in early October. You know that the leadership team worked in-house to hear from each principal, each department chair. You know that with the board, we hosted public hearings. We heard from the community as well as hearing from the leadership team. And the budget that we bring forward to you tonight is the first draft. We understand that there is much work to be done still at this level with you, the board, but we are happy to share this first draft with you, the rationale behind decisions made in this draft, as well as some suggestions for areas that you, the board, will want to continue to look at as you finalize your budget moving forward. As I do every year, I want to put this budget into some context, and I want to start by reminding you, the board and the community, that the budget we bring forward every year is grounded in the work that we do in the schools. Everything that we do now begins with the Portrait of the Graduate. The Portrait of the Graduate identifies 6 competencies that we want our students to take with us when they leave their time with us in the Guilford Public Schools. These competencies are intentionally cross-cutting. They are not connected to any individual subject or discipline. They are not connected to any individual content that we teach in any of the subject areas. They are 6 skills, abilities, competencies that would make any individual successful in the world as an adult. They are the types of competencies that employers look for. We are very proud of the Portrait of the Graduate, and we are proud of what it represents. And every decision that we make, instructionally or budgetarily, points back to this Portrait of the Graduate. More specifically, this year, the Board of Ed identified specific priorities, and these priorities have been overarching and have extended for a long period of time, and specific initiatives for this year. So in addition to the Portrait of the Graduate competencies, we also know that every decision made in this budget leans towards, first, creating a safe environment, physically and emotionally safe environment, building a professional educational environment where we look at all of our educators as skilled, talented, competent educators, professionals. And finally, if we do the first 2 well, an academically challenging environment where we challenge every student in rigorous classrooms every day. Specifically this year, we are working towards continuing to improve instruction and therefore learning through a review of our special education programming, specifically in grades K through 8, an exploration of restorative practices as required by the state of Connecticut, but also good practice, continuing curriculum revisions and resource selection refinement, the implementation, the operation of this year's, the new Guilford Educator Growth Plan, the initiation of a Tech and AI Advisory Committee, which we're really excited about, and a facility study to look at what we're doing with the physical plant. Finally, there's a set of assumptions that we make within the budget. We start with the Portrait of the Graduate. We move through our priorities. We look at our current initiative work. But we also know that as we build a budget document, that again, we don't ask for new dollars. We don't make a decision within this budget without first ensuring that every dollar spent leans towards a safe and healthy environment, maintains our dogged focus on instruction and learning, extends opportunities. Even in this budget, I will be at some pains to point out that this is not a status quo budget. I have no intention of being a superintendent who maintains what we did last year. Every year, we should be improving our practice and extending opportunities for all students. and that we continue to be creative in the way that we use existing resources, including personnel resources, before asking for new monies to be invested into this system. And finally, we budget for the students in front of us. Before we begin a budget process, we look at enrollment. You will note that this budget projects that we will be up 61 students next year. It's worth noting that while we continue to talk about enrollment declines around the state of Connecticut, we've seen slow increases over the last 3 years. And in fact, in 4 of the last 5 years, we've seen enrollment increase in Guilford Public Schools. It's not significant increase, but it is slow and consistent increases. And you know, the board knows that from the last demographic study that we commissioned, we expect to see continuing slow growth over the next 10 years in our student enrollment. So we come forward with this budget fully aware that we are looking at essentially flat enrollment, not significant declines and slow increases. Therefore, this budget request, this first draft of the budget, presents an annual request of $75,763,680. That is a year-over-year increase from the current budget that we are in of $4,641,529, or a percent increase of 6.53%. To put that in some context, this is the single largest percent increase that I have asked for in my now 14 years in the school system as your superintendent. If you look at the history, the last 14 years of budget history, what you begin to see are 3 distinct eras. You see that from 12-13 to 15-16, we were in a period where we were floating right around 2.5% to 3.5% increases annually, and that was fairly consistent for the years prior to that as well. We moved into a period, a sustained period, where we worked really hard to continue instructional improvement while maintaining really frugal budgets. We went through a six-year period where budget increases floated around 1.5%. We stayed below 2% for an extended period of time. And like other districts all across Connecticut post-pandemic, we are now in a new era. An era of increasing costs where you see higher, significantly higher budget requests that have come from the schools in the last few years, predominantly driven by non-discretionary cost increases, and I'll be at some pains to explain those tonight. But I do think it's important to note the different eras of budget that we have been in. As I do every year, I want to note that this budget is built on certain efficiencies. We've been working for over 10 years now to control special education spending, despite the fact that in the last meeting that we had tonight, in the operations meeting, we discussed increases across the state at some length. Special education costs are increasing around the state of Connecticut. Special identification rates are up everywhere, and costs associated with those identification rates are up in Guilford, across the state, and across the country. In Guilford locally, we have worked to be predicting those costs better and to be able to budget to those costs better. In Guilford, for the last 10 years, we've been working at building in-district resources so that we can provide more of those supports in-district. First, because we serve our students better when we serve them in Guilford, but second, because it makes those costs more predictable. Just during the budget update or the financial update earlier this evening, you heard how we are drawing tuitions from surrounding communities. In this budget this month, we have revenues for tuitions that we draw from both Madison and Clinton as we bring students into special education opportunities that we now provide in district. Additionally, you will see in this budget that there is a reduction in the number of classroom teaching positions as we look carefully at class sizes. You will see that in this budget there are no requests to increase staffing in any areas that are non-teaching areas. And as we do every year, our building principals have worked really hard and really well to control the costs at the building level, the costs of supplies and materials and equipment requests this year as well. We've been at some pains to control. just to visually show you what that special education work is that I mentioned, you're going to see that special education spending continues to increase. Guilford is not different than the rest of the state or the rest of the country in that the costs continue to go up. But since year 2018, 2019, you will see that we've been able to close the gap between the actual and the budgeted expenditures. And you will be able to see that if we drew a best line from 18, 19 to today, it's a cleaner line. It is a more predictable line than it was prior to those years. We've worked really hard, if not to limit special education spending, because we would never do that to our students and our families, at least to make it more predictable so that we are in more control. The real story of this year's budget request, however, doesn't come from the work that we've done in efficiencies. It doesn't come from the way that we've worked to control costs. The real story of this year's budget falls into the non-discretionary cost increases, what we have referred to over the last several years as cost drivers. The areas where the cost of doing business is going up, regardless of the investments or the improvements or the enhancements that we bring to the table. Of note, the first two bullets, this is only the second time in 14 years where the first bullet on this list was not salaries. Education is a people-intensive exercise. 80% of our budget every year goes to salaries and benefits associated with our employees. That should predominantly be the salaries. We should be talking about what we pay the best teachers in the state to come in and work with our students. This is the second time in 14 years where the medical increase is larger than the salary increase associated with this budget. It is only the second time in 14 years where the medical increase is larger than the salary increase associated with our budget. Our medical cost this year, the cost associated with providing medical insurance to our employees, is $1.8 million. It is the single largest medical increase that we have ever experienced. The board knows that later this month we will be holding a special meeting with the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen, because this increase impacts the whole town, not just the school system. The school system, however, is the single largest employer in the town. So while an increase of this magnitude affects the whole town, it affects the school budget more, simply because we employ more people than any other organization in the town. Our medical costs are going up $1.8 million. Second to that is the fact that our salaries are increasing this year $1.2 million, and I am proud of that number. Guilford is being impacted by the teacher shortage just as every other community in the state is being impacted by the teacher shortage. And our recent negotiation with the Teachers Association, as well as with other unions and representative groups in the community, we have signed on to some of the largest increases in salary that we have signed on to. And that's intentional, and that's necessary. If we want to continue employing the best teachers in the state, then we need to make sure that we're paying those teachers appropriately. The new teacher contract does so, and the increase in salaries is an additional $1.2 million. The tuition that we speak to here is about out-of-district tuition for special education students, despite the fact that we have built the in-district systems and programs to hold more of our students. We recognize that sometimes we must place students outside of the district to meet their needs appropriately, and the cost of those out-of-district tuitions is going to be an additional $366,000 this year. We spoke about this in the previous meeting. The state's share of that cost, what is identified as excess cost sharing, is down this year. It's down from what it was in previous years. This increase, we identified this increase before we realized the size, the magnitude of the state's shortfall. We don't believe that we're going to need to adjust this number up moving forward. But I've also taken this number off the list of possible places where I'm going to recommend reductions for the Board of Education, because any contingency we had built into that increase is likely gone now. Safety, sanitation, and upkeep is a line that the board has seen in our budget that has run over budget for the last several years. This simply comes down to building and property upkeep and maintenance. These are required contracts that we have in the areas of safety, sanitation, and maintenance. We have been under budget for the last several years. This increase is necessary to properly budget and to make sure that we're putting the monies in that are required in those areas. Contracted and special services are when we bring services into the district. So some of those services are related to students with special needs who we keep in district when we bring in additional outside expertise to support those students. Some of it are for things as boring as the annual audit that is required of our books. The cost of those contracts is increasing. When you look across all of those areas, that's going up by $150,000. Transportation costs are increasing. We spoke about electricity earlier this evening. We believe that this amount was enough to cover the electricity increases, but at your next meeting, we may suggest that there needs to be an increase to that increase. And software costs are going up. That is simply all the software that we employ in the district, and all of those contracts are increasing. These 8 items, all important, all necessary, and all essentially non-discretionary. These 8 items in and of themselves represent a $4 million increase, or a 5.3% increase. The total budget is going up $4.6 million, and these 8 items account for the first $4 million of that. I think it's worth noting, it's worth taking a minute to look at the history of the medical spending that we mentioned. We will be expending over $11 million this year to make sure that all of our employees have health insurance. Again, it's that $1.8 million increase that I mentioned. We've never seen a medical increase of that magnitude. If you look back to school year 21-22 into 22-23, you see that we had a $1.5 million increase that year. That drove the budget presentation that year. We saw a smaller increase the year after. We saw a significant decrease, and now we're bouncing back, and you'll see that the medical spend is now higher than it has ever been in the last 14 years. It's simply the cost of doing business. It's the cost of having employees. And again, it's not a place that I enjoy spending money, but it's money that needs to be spent, and it's driving this year's budget narrative. This budget does include minimal but significant investments instructionally, however. This is the thinnest investment slide that I have ever shared with you. But you heard conversations around these topics in those public hearings and in the conversations with district leaders. This budget does include the increase of 1 teaching position at Guilford High School. It is an additional teacher to teach finance. This is required to meet a new state graduation requirement, and you heard Principal Chaff speak to the need for this. This budget includes the addition of 2 math intervention positions at the elementary schools. We currently have 4 such intervention or specialist positions in reading, 4, 1 at each building. This is only a request for a half-time position at each building. It is to be able to support the multi-tiered system of supports. It is to be able to provide supports to students. It's to be able to meet some new expectations at the state level. And the board knows that you've been hearing the elementary principals ask for this level of support for some time. We believe those are 2 important positions. It also includes an additional pre-K teacher, and that is simply in response to projected enrollment increases that we anticipate for students in the preschool. 4 extended FTEs in this budget. In an upcoming slide, I'm about to share with you that those are offset by a reduction of 2.4 existing positions, a net increase of 1.6 teaching FTEs in this budget. This budget includes 4 curricular stipends. These are opportunities to allow 4 teachers on full contracts to draw additional dollars to work with Dr. Goss in the curriculum office as curriculum specialists and curriculum writers. Many other school districts commit part or full-time FTEs to this work. We do not feel that we are in a position to provide FTEs, but we do believe that providing stipends allows teachers an opportunity to extend their practice, to build their resumes, and to provide that time into the curriculum office for extra pay. No release time associated with this, but minimal cost associated with this. And while this is not a new investment, I put it on this slide just to call it out. The current structure of school and safety monitors in place this year, we redesigned that model. We brought the cost down significantly, but the cost of those positions is still currently being offset by the last of the ARPA dollars at the town level. To maintain the current level of school and safety monitor staffing will require the board to make an additional investment of $70,000. It offsets the money that the town will not be providing us next year. But again, that's no increase in staffing. Everything on this slide amounts to $357,000. That's 0.5%. So the additional investments, the enhancements, the move forward that we're asking for represents 0.5% of the 6.5% increase that we are asking for. It is strategic, it is targeted, it is limited, and it is responsible. I've never included this slide before, but I felt it was important to include this slide this year. We actually had a lot of involvement from the community. We had really good conversations with the leadership team and with you, the board, this year. I wanted to point out some of the investments that we considered and some of the investments that we had included in this draft before the medical numbers came in. This budget does not include the expansion of Italian instruction at the high school. We would like to include a half-time Italian teacher. We're not including it in the draft that we bring to you tonight. This budget does not include the addition of a drama teacher and therefore a related arts opportunity to take drama instruction at Adams Middle School. We've talked about this for the last 2 years, and again, this year I do not feel ready to bring it forward in this early draft of the budget. While this budget has 2 math interventionist positions, it does not include 1 FTE per elementary school. We initially wanted to talk about 4 intervention positions. This budget brings forward 2. It is staged. We had a long and really exciting conversation with the board about bringing in a data analyst, a position in central office to help us digest, understand, and communicate the data around what we do. I think that's an important position. Most districts, many school districts our size around the state have such a position, and I don't feel confident including that in a 6.5% budget this year. Mr. Gurnham came forward and requested an increase of a 0.5 custodian. That is not included in this budget. And our initial design for the curriculum office was 13 curriculum stipends, 1 to work in each of the different subject areas, a really exciting opportunity for a large group of teachers to collaborate. We have trimmed that down to only asking for 4 this year, beginning with what we consider to be a bare minimum. This budget also does not include money for a transportation study. We have heard several people come out and talk again about school start times. I had been in early conversations with an organization that uses AI tools to look at bus routing and to look at school start times. We were excited to further that study. The last time we looked, AI was not available in the way it's available to us today. We're not including money for a transportation study. I will talk about weight room equipment in a little bit, but this budget does not include staffing for a weight room after school hours. There were significant rescissions to requests for supplies and equipment at the school level, and this budget does not include the level of investment in site improvements that we would like to see. While it does go up this year, it doesn't go up the way we'd like to see it go up, and it once again fails to reach the 1% of the overall budget that we have held out for ourselves as a target for some time. So again, when we think about the investments that are included in this budget, they are strategic, they are specific, they are responsible, and they are limited. To make the point about staffing once again, I would like to show it in this way. We're requesting no increases for administrative staffing, paraclerical staffing, custodial staffing, or any monitor positions this year. None of those areas are we asking for increased staffing this year. And in the teaching area, the reason for us being here, the reduction of 2.4 positions offsets the 4 requested new positions to create a net increase of 1.6 new teaching positions in this budget. I want to follow that up with some conversation about what has happened with teaching positions over time. I want to remind the board and the community that over the last 13 to 14 years, over the last decade, we have seen reductions in numerous teaching areas with fewer elementary classroom positions, the elimination of elementary world language, the reduction of world language opportunities at the middle school, not the elimination, but we've tailed those back to some degree. You've seen staffing in PE, music, math, and most significantly in English language arts, all reduced at the middle levels over the last several years. Those positions haven't gone away. People who look at our staffing roster will say, but you still have the same number, if not more, teaching positions. And it's because over the last 14 years, while we've made reductions in those areas that have been related to the historic declines in enrollment, we have reinvested those positions by extending full-day kindergarten, expanding elementary art, increasing the number of social workers and psychologists district-wide, significantly increasing the number of special education teachers district-wide, bringing in more instructional coaches who raise the game for every classroom teacher in this district, and with this budget, bringing in more interventionist positions. And so when I talk in the budget assumptions about being creative and about using our resources thoughtfully, these are the kinds of decisions that we're speaking about. Which means that the story of this year's budget is a very simple, if not exciting, story. It's a significant increase. It's the most significant increase that we have asked for, and it's being driven predominantly by an increase in medical expenditures. A secondary driver, an important driver, and one that we shouldn't shy away from, is the fact that teacher shortages are impacting Guilford as much as everybody else. And to remain competitive, we are addressing that with salary increases for existing staff. And then there have been a number of other various non-discretionary cost increases that impact this budget. This budget increase is not being driven by FTE increases in any area. A request for 1.6 increases across the board is a very, very reasonable request. I want to pause there for a minute on the operational budget, and I want to remind the board and the community that in addition to the annual operating requests that we make, we will also be bringing forward this year a bonding request. There are a number of items on the bonding request, and the board will note that there's a number of relatively small dollar items on this list. Importantly, we will be doing an exterior window and door replacement at Guilford Lake School. We have been moving around the district, thoughtfully improving the envelopes of every building. That is both an energy efficiency as well as a security concern. This year, we moved to Guilford Lake School. We will be replacing windows and doors around the envelope of the exterior of the building. I mentioned before, and it's worth highlighting here, we had significant community involvement in the budget process this year, and the one item that we heard about more than any other item, and particularly that we heard about from students, was to improve the equipment in the weight room facility. There is money in this bonded opportunity. There's $367,000 to replace and improve and upgrade the equipment in that space. It's worth noting none of this money goes to a physical upgrade of the space. The space was renovated when this high school was built, but the equipment wasn't upgraded at that time. So this will bring the equipment up to the level of the physical space. There needs to be a chiller replacement at Calvin Leet Elementary School. At Adams Middle School, we need to continue working with the stream clearing to avoid flooding concerns on the property and around neighboring properties. I want to note that that work is happening exterior to Adams Middle School. We will be conducting a facility study this year, and we need to seriously think about any monies invested into Adams Middle School at this time. It's worth noting that that investment is into the property, not into the building itself as it continues to age. And then two similar projects are required on the property at Baldwin Middle School. There's a retaining pond on the property that needs to be renovated and improved, and there's a retaining wall on the property that needs to be maintained. There's also additional money for architectural and engineering fees associated with future projects, which leads a bonding request of $1.9 million. So when voters come to the referendum, they'll be voting on the town budget, which includes our annual operating budget, and then the bonding request. And this is a relatively small request this year at $1.9 million. As I said in my opening comments, this is the first draft of the budget. Every year, the board knows that you come to our draft with work of your own to do, and I think this year that is more significant than in other years. We currently sit at a 6.9% budget increase, which is a significant increase to ask of the town and the taxpayers. On the other hand, it's got some of the fewest 6.5%.
You said 6.
6.5% increase. On the other hand, there's a lot of good work, and there were a lot of good suggestions, and there were a lot of plans that have been left on the table at this time that are not part of this current proposal. So as you, the board, makes this budget your own, I encourage you to consider both additions and reductions to this budget. The additions could lead us to have further conversation about 2 versus 4 math interventionists, could bring us back to the conversation of the value of a data analyst position, could bring us back to discuss the opportunity that a drama teacher at Adams would afford. I think close on the heels of the Wellness Center, the most comments we heard were about the opportunity to learn Italian in Guilford. We may want to discuss the part-time Italian teacher. We may want to talk about the curricular stipends, the custodian, and we may need to discuss whether or not there is currently enough money budgeted for special education tuitions moving forward. All of these conversations could see us increasing the investment into this budget. Recognizing the magnitude of the increase, we also think that we may need to visit the discussion about summer pathways opportunities that we offer. This is a non-mandated, no longer grant-funded summer opportunity that we provide at some expense that services approximately 100 students. We may want to talk about whether or not this is the year to add math intervention at all, or whether we remove the 2 of the 4 positions that are in the budget. We may want to apply the same conversation to the curricular stipends, and while we would have preferred to ask for 3, it may not be the right year to ask for 4. I am hesitant to do this in this current hiring environment, but the budget as I present it to you does not include at this time any retirement savings. We could consider adding some conservative number that we expect to recognize for retirement savings. That is a risk. At times, we have ended up spending more to replace a position that has left in the last year or 2 in the current environment. I mentioned that site improvements, we did not invest the way we wanted to this year. However, we've done really well over the last 10 years on erasing the deferred maintenance backlog. We may want to consider, we may have to consider further reducing monies that are invested in site improvements, recognizing that we will be taking on and beginning to build a list of preventative maintenance backlog should we choose to do that. And I'm prepared at your next meeting when you begin deliberating to look even more closely at elementary classroom sections. There may be the opportunity to look very careful at board projected class sizes and to make further reductions in elementary classroom sections as we make difficult decisions moving forward. And these are just the ideas that we have at this time. Mrs. Trudeau and I are going to continue talking. We will have more suggestions, areas for you to look at, and I know that the board will have questions in both of these areas as well. It is going to be a challenging budget season this year. All of that being said, it is going to be a challenging budget season in Guilford Public Schools, which continues to be a lighthouse school district in the state of Connecticut. Guilford Public Schools continues to be the best return on investment of any school system that I am aware of in the state of Connecticut. We are recognized around the state for our achievements in every area. People continue to reach out and ask if they can come to Guilford schools and look at what we do. We continue to draw students from surrounding neighborhoods into our special education programming. Dr. Goss gets requests to look at our teacher evaluation plan. The state sends people to Guilford Public Schools when they look at ways to do the work well. We continue to maintain our focus on instruction, high-quality instruction, and deep student learning. And when you look at what that means at the state level, I have shared this with you before, but this is a comparison of per student spending versus performance on the State Accountability Index. What we have plotted for you here are DIRG A and B districts. DIRG B districts in blue, DIRG A districts in red. Anybody who's higher than Guilford sits at the center of the cross. Anybody who is above that horizontal green line is outperforming us on the state accountability test. Anybody who's above but to the right is doing so while they spend more money. And to the left, I would argue that of the dots that exist in the box on the upper left-hand quadrant, only one of them is statistically significant. You see a number of districts that cluster right around 82.3 to 83.6, within 1 or 1.5 percentage points of our performance on that state measure. And then one district that spends less and outperforms us by about 4%. Now, I share with the board every year that I have a lot of hesitations about the way the state measures student learning. The state doesn't claim to measure student learning. It measures student performance. For all that we've done in education, we still don't have a reliable measure of learning. We look at reading, we look at numeracy and literacy as proxies for learning. And again, even with all of my hesitations, when we look at this grid, that tells me that we continue to be one of the best returns on investment in the state of Connecticut. You can't outperform if you outspend. And if you don't outspend, and the one district that is significantly above us, statistically significantly above us, is also significantly larger than us. And I would argue that a lot of that is efficiency of scale that you see there. We are going to do a deeper dive on these results. We're going to talk to you more about students' performance measures at the next CIA meeting. But for the purpose of this presentation, the Accountability Index is the most comprehensive holistic measure that the state has. Despite my worries about the validity and reliability of it, it's the best measure that we have, and we do best on the most aggregate measure. We do best when you look at our performance the most holistically. I am incredibly proud of the portrait of the graduate. I am incredibly proud of the instruction that takes place in this district. I'm incredibly proud of the results. I'm incredibly proud that for 14 years we've never taken a step backwards. We've always moved forward. So even in this most challenging of budget years, I'm excited to continue this conversation with you, the board, here tonight and over the next several weeks as this draft becomes the board-approved budget for 25-26. Happy to take any questions.
Thank
Have any
you.
conversation tonight.
People may definitely have questions. So just so the public is aware, the Board of Ed all had but their budget books made available to them last week. We do have a timeline ahead of us, and I just want to, I don't want to leave you standing there. I just want to note this for the board. Because of the way the January calendar falls this year, we have, as is typical 2 weeks from now, 2 public hearings on the budget, and then need to vote on it the following Monday. We essentially, because of the calendar, lose a week of deliberation in this process. Last year, because January 1st was a Monday, we had an extra week. So we're just going to want to think about that. We may want to plan early for a meeting later in that January 27th week. Because I'm guessing, and I'm looking at Mrs. Trudeau, if you know, our calendar here says February 3rd, Board of Ed special meeting to approve the budget, and then budget submitted to the town for publication. I think we don't have, there's a TBD there, but I think it's like by that Wednesday usually, Tuesday or Wednesday. I don't know if you know any differently right now.
You mean the 4th or the 5th?
Sorry, what did I just say out loud?
Because you said Monday, so this is a Monday. That's
Yeah,
same thing.
no, yeah. So we have a meeting Monday the 3rd. We're presenting to the Board of Finance the following week on the 13th, and it needs to be published ahead of time. So there's really not wiggle room after February 3rd, is my understanding.
Yeah.
We've
I'm sorry,
already got a
Linda's
special
looking.
meeting scheduled for the 28th, but it makes good sense to plan on another special meeting.
That's public hearing on the 20th.
That's public hearing, yeah.
I have a special meeting scheduled for the 3rd.
Yeah, I don't have a special meeting. Anyway, we don't have to figure this out right now. I'm just,
It's the town medical meeting.
oh, that's right, sorry.
That night is
Earlier
not
that
before
evening.
that.
Right,
That's right.
yeah, so we've got
That's
the
right.
insurance meeting with
Sorry,
the other
that's
two
right.
boards, as well as the hearing And we have, right, the board has engaged in deliberation on both of those nights after the public has had their opportunity to comment.
And we may find ourselves doing that. Okay. So again, I just wanted to, I was kind of really aware of
It's tight.
of the
It's tight.
timeline. Having said that, we're gonna want to keep an eye on that, and we may need to carve out additional opportunities for a board meeting, which of course we will then post and publicize prior. So we all have just obviously sat through the presentation. Some of you may have had time to really dive into these budget books. You may be in various stages of that. Certainly a good time if people have questions already to start to ask them. Again, given the abbreviated
I have a
timeline.
comment on the presentation. You appropriately emphasized that we are doing justice to salaries, particularly for teachers, which is right. But I think it's important to note that the percentage increase for salaries is only about 3.5%.
Correct.
Which is a little bit more than half of the total increase for the budget. So that's not causing the large increase that we're facing. The other increases are really, so the money we're spending on personnel, which represents 80%, is not ultimately the killer here.
That's exactly right. No, I think that's an important point to continue making.
I don't want our teachers blamed or that we're giving away the shop. The fact is that we are the victims of the larger inflation. And in light of the fact that the budget went down last year with even a less of a requested increase, we're all very sensitive to the fact that whatever we come up with needs to be explained well, because in fact there's just nothing here that is fact. In fact, one could argue it's so parsimonious that it's a little depressing, but the fact is it's responsible.
I would agree with that.
I think it's worth it for education for the public, just in terms of, we saw a dramatic decrease in medical last year, and now we're seeing the opposite of that. And a lot of people would say, just like they would in their insurance or their own medical, that why don't we go out to shop, right? So I think that's going to be a lot of, what we're going to have from the public is why are we tolerating such an increase? Can you speak to exactly what our options are at this point?
Yes, and it's important to remind the community that we went out to public bid last year. It's also important to note that it is difficult to do that every single year because of the size of the group that we cover. So in the public school side, we've got over 600 employees and their families that we insure on the school side alone. That doesn't include all of the town employees. So last year we did go out to bid, and we really looked for the best value that we could find. We ultimately ended up staying with Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, and when we showed the history of that, you saw that there was a decrease in medical costs last year. One of the reasons for the special meeting on the 28th is to really dive into the details, but the quick story is that when you are self-insured and when you insure that large a body, the number can be fickle based on the last 12 months. And over the last 12 months, our medical expenses have been significant, more than they were for the last 2 years. And the insurance company responds to that. So, and I hate to use this example, but just as fire insurance is going to go up in California for everybody as a result of this most recent experience, our health insurance is going up this year because last year a number of our employees or their family members needed to take advantage of the insurance, and the insurance company doesn't do that. They're not in the altruism business. So when we use it for the last 2 years, we see an increase in costs moving forward, and that's what we're experiencing this year.
And just so the community is aware, the special meeting you hear us referring to, the Board of Ed, the Board of Finance, and the Board of Selectmen are going to meet to be with our medical consultant. This impacts not just the Board of Ed, but also the town in a way that we haven't quite done before because of the significant increase. It seemed really important that we all be in the same room together, the three boards, to meet with this consultant.
Dr. Balistraci, I think it's also worth noting this increase in cost related to medical insurance is for the same medical insurance that all of our employees have had over the last several years. In fact, if anything, this most recent negotiation that we've mentioned, employees are contributing more to their own insurance than they have previously. We are not improving the insurance. We're not providing a Cadillac plan. It's for the same plan that we had last year. It's just become more expensive moving forward for every individual that we insure. And it all totals up to the $1.8 million increase, or a total expenditure of $11.1 million out of a $75 million budget that goes to insuring our employees.
And had we not seen the dramatic decrease that we saw last year, those funds would have been in the budget. We would not have seen such a dramatic increase percentage-wise, because if you look at the 22-23 numbers, we're only looking at a few $100,000. I think it's maybe $200,000 at most, the difference between that year and this year.
Correct.
And the order of magnitude of this is, in previous meetings, we've learned that individual people who must use their insurance can at times vary from $50,000 to hundreds of thousands of dollars in a given year. So you only need 3 or 4 people who get sick or have some sort of a problem that year, and all of a sudden the numbers get very, very large quickly.
It's the nature of employers insuring their employees. And again, we're the largest employer in Guilford.
Other comments or questions?
So we can do the same thing where we can send in individual questions.
Yeah, I
have a lot of little ones that-
I think what we've done in the past is if you all send questions to me, I can funnel them to Linda. It just helps her. What I can do is try to remove duplicates and save her a little bit of time, and then it allows her to answer at one time and not in a staggered fashion. And obviously, if at any point that's not quite working, we can adjust. But that way, we can again try to streamline the process. But absolutely.
And thank you for that reminder. That running document works well. And when we meet next with the Board of Finance, we open up the opportunity to them as well. And so we create one running document that begins with you and also blends in Board of Finance questions, and it becomes really helpful along the way.
Dr. Freeman, I have a question. So you have, again, in cost structures, tuition. This is a line we look at closely every year. We've just learned and talked about it in the Operations Committee that the excess cost grant is going to cover just shy for Guilford of 60% costs. In the past, it's been anywhere from 72, 73 to 80%. I assume this number, or the number in the budget, was created prior to this information?
It was.
Do you think this is going to require a possible increase in consideration for next year?
Not at this moment. So we created that number before we got the most current information from the state, but that number was created with a little bit of contingency built into it.
Okay.
Usually, when I put up a slide that shows you areas of possible increase and possible decrease, I show tuition in both columns.
Right.
I have only showed it this year on the possible increase. I
Right.
am not suggesting it's an area where we can afford any reduction at this time because
of that information.
we've now used the contingency that we built in. We would be comfortable, if not confident, holding that number. We would be more confident if there were to be some increase to that number, but understanding the other pressures on the budget, we are not necessarily going to be pushing for that.
Yep. Other questions for Dr. Freeman of the administration at this time? No. Unfortunately, for other districts, I think we are in good company.
Exactly right.
Where I'm in a position not only where I'm monitoring them because I'm interested in seeing what's happening, but I'm on a listserv with other board chairs, and numbers are starting to come in from boards as their superintendents present proposed budgets to them. And again, we're in good company at this level, which I don't know if good company is the right word, but it's what's happening across the state. So.
No, and I think it's fair to note if you think back to the slide I shared about increase history over time, I think that it is not unusual for towns across Connecticut to be talking about 4%, 5%, and 6% increases, and it hasn't been unusual for us in Guilford over the last 3 years to be talking about 4%, 5%, and 6% increases. I think post-pandemic, you have seen the demands changing around school districts, and we are not unique in talking about a budget of this magnitude here in Guilford.
All right. So as I noted, each board member has the detailed line-by-line budget in their budget book. This evening is, I find, particularly helpful because, again, while I have this budget book, hearing from Dr. Freeman, getting kind of a summary of efficiencies, of cost drivers, of investments deferred. These kinds of numbers really sets a context for that. You will perhaps note the next time we meet, various ones of us will have sticky Post-its all over the place and highlighters, and as we all dive deep into this document. We are depending on public input because that's always a helpful piece of information for us. So I do want to remind the public that obviously our Board of Ed meetings are public to attend, but on Monday, January 27th, and Tuesday, January 28th, we will be holding in this room public hearings on the budget. You will, at that point, have been able to see the budget in detail, and it is the opportunity for you to come and speak to the board about your thoughts on the budget. We also, just for information purposes, will be meeting with the Board of Finance next week. Prior to their meeting, a joint meeting. This will be our second with them, and is a typical approach that we've taken over a number of years, really to feed information and make it the most informed process for all boards. And then we will be, again, have a meeting scheduled for February 3rd, Monday, February 3rd, to vote on the budget. But if we find we need to add an additional meeting prior to that to give us an opportunity to discuss and deliberate, we will be posting that for the public as well. Any other comments or questions on the process before I move on with this meeting?
Dr. Balistraci.
Yes.
I just want to point out that as of tomorrow morning, the entire budget book will be on our website. So all the same exact information that you have received will be available for the public tomorrow, as well as the full budget timeline will be on the website. I believe that already is, but I just want to make that.
Thank you. No, that's very helpful.
As well as the slides. So if you don't want to watch them on YouTube with my narration, the community will be able to flip through them individually on the website as well.
Okay. And also, as usual, if you have questions prior to the public meetings, if you are not able to come to those public forums on the 27th or the 28th and you want to reach out to board members by email, please do so as well.
Dr. Balistraci, these all start at 7:30?
Yes, I believe so. Thank you. That's an important piece of information. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A lot to take in and absorb, and we have a lot to review over the next several weeks. Okay. We are up to 9.1 on the board agenda. 9.1 is to act on personnel items.
Dr. Balistrossi, may I make one correction?
You sure may.
Karen Chapman, her appropriate title would be reading specialist, not reading teacher. It's a minor point, but
Nope, that's important. Thank you. Okay, so we, the board, are being asked to ratify the resignation of the following teachers for the purposes of retirement. Harry Breelman, Guilford High School, Science, 18 years of service. Karen Chapman, Baldwin Middle School, Reading Specialist, 25 years of service. And Deborah Dahl, Baldwin Middle School, Math Intervention Teacher, 20 years of service. These are all teachers who would be retiring as of June 30th.
Yeah, that was my question.
Yeah, June 30th,
Okay.
2025. So is there a motion to approve the resignations of the following teachers for the purposes of retirement?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And I do want to thank these three individuals cumulatively giving us over 60 years of service. I certainly note that my kids have had a couple of these individuals, and I really, really thank you for your dedication, your expertise, and the time that you've given our community. All right, 9.2 is to act on a request from Adams to donate obsolete textbooks. This is not an unusual request. We've been asked to do this before. Adams Middle School is no longer using the the Bay State Book Company. And is asking.
No, that's who we're.
I'm sorry.
We're donating.
I'm sorry. I've just
various titles to be given to the Bay State Book
to the
Company.
Bay State. Thank you, everybody. And so we, per the Board of Education Policy 3214, the cumulative value of textbooks is possibly more than 2,000. The Board of Ed is asked then to approve this request. So again, thank you for the corrections. Asking to donate science textbooks no longer in use to the Bay State Book Company to be repurposed or recycled. Is there a motion to approve this request?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And
I'm going to abstain on that.
you're going to abstain? Okay, Mr. Brooks abstains. All right. 9.3 is to approve a donation of $1,307 from the Guilford High School Music Boosters for the stipend to pay a music and mentors advisor. I have a question. Music and mentors advisor.
We've done this.
Have we done this before?
We have. We've done this previously, and it is everything that it says. It is an opportunity for someone to mentor aspiring musicians and help them through the program.
Terrific. I just don't know that I'd heard that title.
I asked too.
Okay, excellent. I've been around for a while, so that's why I figured. Great. So again, we're being asked to accept this donation of $1,307 from the Guilford High School Music Boosters. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed or abstentions? All right, so that's approved, everyone. And again, we are so frequently in receipt of donations from groups like the Guilford High School Music Boosters, and we thank them so very much for supporting our students. All right, 9.4 is to receive for possible action the 2025-2026 preschool tuition rates. This is something we discussed in, I know, Operations Committee meetings before. There is a proposed increase in front of us of 10%. This would be then for a full-day session in the 25-26 year, $7,973, or for a half-day session, $3,658. To be clear, this is preschool tuition for typical peers who would be attending the preschool the students who are there as part of our special services identified programs are covered otherwise.
Can you remind us how many students that entails?
Talking approximately 40 students. And so again, as Dr. Balistraci said, the students with special needs who require the preschool service come at no cost. That's covered as part of their free appropriate public education. We offer a similar number of seats to typical peers so that those students are in the least restrictive environment. So it's for a relatively small number of students, approximately 40 typical peers. It's a very small opportunity. It is one of the best deals in town, and we run a waiting list and a lottery every year for families who would like to have their students.
The words out of my mouth. It is an amazing value, and there typically is a strong amount of people that come out for these limited slots.
Very limited number of slots, and again, it is one of the best deals in town.
Okay.
Is there, and then if there's further discussion, happy to receive it. Is there a motion to approve the proposed 10% increase in tuition for the preschool 25-26 school year?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions about this? Further discussion? All right. I heard a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that's everybody. Thank you. All right. We are now up to reports of committees. Does the policy committee have anything to report?
Do not.
Does the operations committee have anything to report?
Nothing that hasn't been covered. It was a lengthy meeting, but a lot to cover. I don't think there's really anything that we didn't touch upon.
All right, thank you. Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Committee?
No, we'll be meeting in a few weeks.
Okay. Any liaisons to town committees have anything to report out? School related?
No.
All right, we're moving through this quickly. And we're still working on the liaison to learn. We're up to number 11 on the agenda. Public comments from someone does not have to be related to the agenda. If you would like to speak to the Board of Ed, is there anyone who would like to make a public comment? All right. Going to ask that you give your name and address and keep your comments within 3 minutes, please.
Of course, thank you. Nate Jacobson, 1470 Long Hill Road. Good to see everybody. You guys all hearing me loud and clear? Good?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. You guys know I've been a passionate supporter of trying to upgrade the weight room. I'm thrilled to see it as a capital item in here in the budget. I want to try to put a little bit better of a picture of what I envision the weight room becoming. I helped the girls lacrosse team start their lifting program this winter. We started last Monday. So when I arrived at the high school today, there had already been 2 teams working out in the weight room that left at 4 o'clock. Football and lacrosse, roughly 40 boys until the 4 o'clock hour. When I got there at 4, we had 10. It grew to 12 lacrosse girls. There were approximately 20 male baseball players that worked out till probably 4:30 when they took off. Crew came in, both male and female crew team, as they do four days a week. Incredibly dedicated crew of, if I'm guessing, 10 to 15 ladies and 15 to 25 boys. That's the hub of activity that I'm talking about. That's a Monday in the middle of the winter. I love that this program has, or this budget, excuse me, is talking about upgrading the facility. My big fear is without staffing it next year, if you build it, they will come. This budget does not include the non-athletes. Every kid that's going there is an athlete. I would make it a case that it's more important to pull the kids in that aren't involved in another extracurricular activity. This doesn't include, this budget for next year, a staffing component that would address the students that aren't in physical education class. Students in phys ed class, it's required that they attend the equivalent of one year out of their 4 years in high school. By not having a staffing component over school, you're only reaching roughly 25% of your population. So as you deliberate on additional items to the budget, I asked, does it make sense for a relatively small budget item of staffing it, of both staffing it and hitting the equipment and the facilities that are there? Thank you.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board this evening? All right. Hearing none, we have come to the end of the meeting. I do just want to repeat that our public forums on the budget will be held here in the Guilford High School Library/Media Center on Monday, January 27th and Tuesday, January 28th, both starting at 7:30. This is an opportunity for the public to comment to the Board of Ed on the proposed budget. If you are unable to attend either of those, please feel free to reach out to the board via email. We are going to be diving into these budget books and deliberating. We will be gathering our own questions and getting answers from the administration. They may be questions you have as well, so please keep tuned to that. We've heard from Mrs. Trudeau that this budget will be on the Guilford Public Schools website tomorrow, as will the presentation we heard from Dr. Freeman. So we hope that provides you, the public, with the detailed information you may be seeking as the board deliberates. Any other comments or questions before we close? All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you for joining us. Have a good evening.